Okay, we are live on the road here from Webscale Networks. Now, we're trying something a little different today. If we have any technical problems, any technical glitches, then please just bear with me. I'm going to check real quick just to make sure we are live everywhere we need to be live. It looks like we're streaming on YouTube at the moment. If you're watching this on YouTube, let me know in the chat, are the audio levels good? Are you seeing the video nice and clear? We're also streaming on LinkedIn. If you happen to be watching this on LinkedIn, again, click down in there and leave me a comment. Give me a thumbs up. Let me know if the video and audio quality are good enough for you. Now, again, this is the most complex mobile setup we've ever done. I've got everything on one monitor, everything on one machine here. We've got one camera, but I've got it split into multiple views. So this is going to be a very, very interesting stream. And so we're here, again, at Webscale, and I want to talk to you a little bit about the hidden pitfalls of migrating e-commerce platforms. And oftentimes with these migrations, the host is going to see a lot of those pitfalls. The hosts are going to get a lot of those tickets that come with the pitfalls. And so I, again, went right to the source, went to Webscale, and we're going to have Sonal Puri join us here. Sonal, appreciate you joining us on the stream. If you would, introduce yourself and tell everybody a little bit more about Webscale.
Thank you, TJ, and thank you for visiting our office and doing this complex setup. It's actually really cool seeing you in action, because I've seen you sort of on the big screen and the small screen at LinkedIn and the YouTube live streaming. So this is really interesting. So I really appreciate you taking the effort and bringing all of this equipment and coming to our office. I know it's quite a trek. So let me share a little bit about Webscale. Webscale is focused on the digital commerce industry, and essentially what we provide is a complete end-to-end solution that includes performance, security, availability, 24/7 support, and cloud hosting. So we work with pretty much any cloud provider. We are cloud provider agnostic, so if you have a preference, you want to come on board with AWS, GCP, Azure, Alibaba, Cloud Sigma, we support all of these cloud providers, or a cloud provider that's regional that you may not heard of, we're happy to support that as well. Customers just love the way we're able to provide insight into what goes on behind the scenes. I think our unique value proposition is we really understand the e-commerce space, because we run more than 1,000 stores, and we really understand the cloud space. So we bring the two together, and I think we're pretty uniquely positioned in helping all of your viewers.
Now we're going to get on topic here, and we're going to talk about the pitfalls of migrating e-commerce platforms. But if you have questions, as always, we're here for your questions. And so if you have a particular question and you want to help steer this conversation, you guys always have the best questions. So let me know in the chat. Again, I've got a lot going on here. I'll try to keep the chat as monitored as I possibly can. We'll try to make sure we get to all of your questions. Now, I have my very basic middle-of-the-road questions just to kind of prime the conversation. But again, as we go through this, let me know your questions. And I wanted to start in the Magento space. A lot of people are familiar with e-commerce, migrations, and especially that big M1 to M2 migration. But from your perspective at Webscale, what are you seeing out there? What are the number one reason that your customers are saying they're looking to migrate, and what platforms are they considering?
So that's an interesting one, TJ. So we've been running Magento storefronts on our platform from, I'd have to say, 2013. So we've seen pretty much all flavors of Magento. We've seen Magento go through their own journey. We see customers on our platform that use Magento 1.x, 2.x, community, enterprise, you kind of name it. They're succeeding with it. What we see in terms of the other platforms, so we also support, as a side note, we also support all other cloud platforms. We are cloud platform and e-commerce platform agnostic. So we have customers that use probably the largest WordPress WooCommerce customer deployment runs on Webscale. Very large sites that run Drupal, Ruby on Rails, React as a front end, a lot of JavaScript sites. So we run all of that. So we have a lot of experience, but I'd say Magento is still ahead in the number of sites that we run. And where we see them re-platform, so we see 1.x go to 2.x, obviously with the decision making at Magento on how they want to bring everybody to the latest version, which has a lot of improvements. We see a lot of that. We typically see that with customers that are on the B2B side that are seeing a lot of growth. They're re-platforming, going with Magento Enterprise. If they have very large workloads, they tend to stay with the likes of Webscale. We also see some of them reconsidering moving to WordPress WooCommerce because that's interesting. We see some customers actually downgrade to community because financially it's more compelling for them to spend more time on their and energy on their hosting and some other features and some of the backend systems that with their growth are starting to struggle. So that's really what we're seeing. We see some of our smaller customers actually re-platform to a more fully hosted solution as well, which makes sense if you're at a certain size and you don't have too much complexity, you don't have too many catalog items, you don't have a multi-store requirement, you can re-platform off to a really simple, fully hosted way as well.
Okay. And so I've got several people in the chat saying that your audio is a little low. I boosted that audio up some. I'm going to try to not yell into the microphone. I tend to get a little animated and I start, flailing around and yelling into the microphone. So I'm going to boost it up a little bit, and then I'm going to try to not rupture your eardrums as we continue the conversation. But continue to let me know if the audio is an issue. I appreciate all of the feedback. All right, so let's talk about Magento in particular, right? And if you're going to go to Magento 2, whether you're on Magento 1 or whether you're on another platform, can you maybe outline some of the benefits or some of the thoughts that people should be exploring when evaluating whether or not Magento 2 is the right migration for them?
Yeah, for sure. So obviously, if they're in their 1.x journey, they're definitely looking at, thinking about, or actively migrating to a Magento 2.x. I'd have to say maybe about 30% of our customer base has already done it, if not a higher number. Things to look at is it's very, very rich in features and functionality, but the way that you run the backend systems or the infrastructure pieces, in our experience, and we've learned this over time, is quite different on what's needed from a host like us. So it's not a one size fits all. There's different pieces that build up your Magento 2 deployment that will make a difference. So, obviously from Webscale side, we've got things like site caching. So we can do dynamic site caching that really helps the front end of the Magento 2 experience and get the site to really fast performing. We've got a lot of ways to set up security and web controls that really help Magento 2 sites do the best they can. Even if there's issues with new patches, we can set up web controls and manage the traffic and with a flick of a switch get all of our Magento 2 customers not have any impact on those kinds of issues.
So why, obviously there's the end of life of Magento 1 that's kind of hanging over a lot of merchants' heads at this point. Is that really the main reason if you're on Magento 1 you need to be evaluating your options now, or is there more that goes into that thought process?
So we've seen a mixed bag. We've seen a certain subset of customers that will take things at face value and they hear from Magento that, hey, we're going to end of life it. And I've heard stories around, one of our former customers actually went off to a fully hosted platform because they got a feeling that Magento was going to end of life their support and everything else. And they ended up having to mortgage their home to redo their entire site and re-platform, which was just scary because I wish we had just talked to them. We would have shared with them that it's not the end of the world if there's not support when you're looking at that way. There's actually a lot of third-party partners out there that are willing to work with you to provide you with that gap and support. And I'm sure Jamerson has got some conversation that you can have with them as well. And then in other cases, I'd say the more progressive customers are looking to re-platform up to Magento 2 because there's some really cool features and functionality that have been included in the new world that I think their business benefits from. a lot of the auto management systems, a lot of the backend integration. So we're big Magento fans. We think it's a great platform, and we we really support our customers. Some of our customers are doing some massive volumes. We've got a customer called Dollscale, and they've got a very, very high-end DevOps environment in the cloud, and they've got a very, very high-end deployment of Magento, and they run some crazy walls of traffic through Black Friday and Cyber Monday, and do a phenomenal job. So anybody out there that thinks Magento doesn't scale hasn't seen a combination of Webscale and Magento. We do a great job of doing that.
So you've decided to replatform. You're all in. You're ready to go. What does that look like? Like, what all is involved in an actual replatforming project?
So a lot, right? You have to first work with the developer and figure out what that replatform looks like, why you're doing it, what are the features of Magento you're going to be deploying, how you're going to set up the environment. I can tell you what you shouldn't do, which is to take your existing live site and try and upgrade it. We've had a customer that has 16-hour outage. Actually, they were a prospect while we were talking to them. They had a 16-hour outage because they tried to take their existing Magento 1 site and upgrade it on the fly. In production, taking a 2-hour maintenance window that, oh yeah, we can get it done. We'll install all of this stuff. We'll take a backup of our database. And they ended up quickly rolling back, fixing all the changes, having a 16-hour outage, and it was a huge problem. So that's definitely not how you want to do it. The way that we work with our customers in doing it is going from Magento 1 to Magento 2. You keep running your Magento 1 site, and we run it pretty much even after the Magento 2 site has gone live. We run it in parallel. So what we do is we start off first with the dev environment. Then we add on a staging environment where they can actually test the live site. And then the Magento 2 site, actually with the flip of a DNS, the Magento 2 production site goes live. And if there's any glitches or issues or orders are not catching up, we can actually flip back to the previous version. So that's the way we would recommend doing it. Is a very planned work. And the other thing that's really important is to make sure that your infrastructure partner, in this case your hosting partner, that would be Webscale, and working with your dev partner very closely. So Jamerson and Webscale would work very closely. Even if the customer was not project managing it, we would understand what needs to get done to make sure that the delivery is very positive at the end, with really no loss of revenue along the journey.
Yeah, I want to make sure we're clear on that this is a migration, not an upgrade. I believe that's where a lot of merchants tend to misunderstand, is that Magento 1 to Magento 2 is not an upgrade. It is, it's a similar platform, but it is a very distinct platform as well. And so we want to make sure that you understand that you can't just upgrade live. I mean, you should never upgrade a site live in production anyway. But even, this is a it's a different animal. It's a much bigger problem. And so, you need to evaluate your functionality and then, make sure that you're working in parallel with your live site, like you said, to have both up at the same time and then flip over once you're ready. So, what are the, top challenges that merchants face when it comes to replatforming? If there issues around availability, performance, user experience, security, like what are those challenges and how should merchants go about trying to tackle them?
So here's what I would say, right? The various things that we've seen, and I'll just share real world examples of the kind of issues that we see customers face as they go through the migration. So the first thing is, of course, finding the right partner to work with you to build your new site, because it's pretty much, to TJ's point, it's a new deployment. It's not just taking your site and upgrading it. Once you make that decision and make sure that you talk to your infrastructure partner as well, so that you understand what the parameters are and how you want to go about sort of designing the backend systems and doing all of those pieces. The biggest things to sort of keep in mind is project managing, having a realistic timeline. So the things we've seen people struggle with is, one is the unrealistic timelines that they set for themselves, or their partners that they're working with may set for them. And sometimes they'll say, in 3 months, I'm going to go live with my M2 environment. That doesn't happen. It takes a lot longer than that to get it right. The second thing that we see is Magento 2 site goes live, and there's certain parts of it that are just really slow. And it could be a code problem. It could be a number of things on the back end. we like to work with our customers to figure those problems out before they go live. So, we have this really cool thing that if our customers are listening, our traffic viewer that actually can look at every single session, every single request, and analyze it for various things, including page load and time to first byte and request size and all of those pieces. So we want to make sure that it's not just the front page, because we make the mistake of saying the front page is loading in 4 seconds, the site must be fine, but that's not the case. So there's all of that performance that needs to be tuned before you can go live. There's the availability of it. So the kind of load that's put on the various pieces that build up a Magento site is a little different than a Magento 1 site. So we like to make sure that all the various components are in a very scalable infrastructure. So you all may have heard of Webscale's predictive autoscaling. That's really what the core of our technology stack is, and what we have all our patents on, and what really helps us deliver these large sites without a flaw when a wall of traffic comes at us. Making sure that there's some form of functional testing, some form of load testing. Different parts of the site should be tested for load, like your checkout page and so on. And then there's the security. Like, do you have all the patches done? Are you locking down your admin? Do you have any sort of honeypots, like your WordPress blog that's sitting by the side that's not properly connected? We want to make sure that all of those pieces are nicely tied in. Your backend logging systems, your messaging systems, everything should be functionally tested before you go live. So it's important the host, the development partner, and the customer work, build a strategy, build a project plan. I think on the other side, what ends up happening is the people that were on Magento 1, for example, they built their site over a long period of time. So there's a lot of customizations and pieces added on over, and it turns into this, call it this monster. But then when you go to the Magento 2 thing, it's from scratch. You're kind of doing it fresh in a new light. And it really helps to make sure that you have everything you need. Let's not surprise you where you're not getting some of the information that is important to you.
Definitely, and I just kind of want to reiterate some of that in that like you said, Magento 1 is, most Magento 1 sites nowadays are evolutions over time. Like, a lot of these merchants have been on the platform for 6, 7, 8 years,
a really long time,
and they don't realize how much their site's changed over that time. And it's you want to take that opportunity to not make this about M1's end of life. I hate that motivation. I hate the motivation that someone is forcing me to migrate my site. You do have options, right? You can stay on Magento 1. I don't think that's a viable solution long term. At least there's a chance somebody's going to support it, but if you're doing actual business, that's a risk, right? That support will continue, or that it'll be adequate. But you don't need to panic either. You need to look at this as an opportunity to evaluate where your e-commerce stands, what your customers' demands are, and can we leverage this to not just functionally move exactly everything over to a Magento 2 site. Because if you get done and your M2 site looks and works exactly like your M1 site, I feel like you've missed an opportunity.
A massive opportunity.
Right? To evaluate exactly where you stand and how you can improve your business. And so I want to make sure everybody understands that this should be looked at as an opportunity to improve. Now, there are fringe cases. There are still a lot of people out there that are not happy about it. There are a lot of people, a lot of businesses. One of the complexities we have in the Magento space is that the cost of development continues to rise. Right? There's a lot of business out there. Developers are very much in demand. And so agencies are charging a premium right now to do the implementation. And so when a lot of these merchants moved on to M1, that development cost may have been $40 an hour to build that site, and then to evolve it over time. I mean, those costs may have gone up, but when the bulk of the work was done, the costs were more affordable. And now they're 3 or 4 times that, depending on, or 5 times that, depending on the agency you go with. And so it's just really painful for those merchants to try to swallow those costs to move and just be on par with what they have now functionally. So it's definitely understandable, But if the motivation is negative, then it's never going to benefit your business.
Yeah, could not agree with you more, because if the motivation is, oh my God, they're going to end of life, you make the wrong decisions, right? You may decide, I'm just going to re-platform off Magento because I'm so mad at them that they're forcing me to do this. But the reality is, Magento 1 had a lot of problems. And if you over-customize it using all these plugins, it got really, really bad. We've seen a few, sort of horror stories in the market. But to TJ's point, it is an opportunity when you're going to Magento 2, because you could think about it as a whole new experience. Now, I will say, we've got a great set of partners, and what we do is we work with our partner set like Jamerson and come up with a compelling way to work with these customers, because we all understand that, writing a large check in one go for this massive upgrade or re-platform to a Magento 2 universe is difficult for any e-commerce brand, especially in the mid-market. So work with us, talk to us. Don't make a quick decision because somebody walks in the door and promises you, a portion of your revenue exchange for a brand new site, because there are people out there doing that, and that's got other problems. You're just locked into an experience with somebody else for 3-4 years, which is difficult.
Yeah, I haven't seen. So, are you seeing that a lot? I mean, you're seeing agencies that, if they come across a merchant that maybe doesn't have the revenue to support rebuilding the site, mm-hmm. they're actually taking a percentage of revenue in order to build the website?
So it's not the agency partners. There are these new end-to-end e-commerce companies that don't have a lot of time in the market, but they have a new business model. And that business model says, I'll take a portion of your revenue and I'll give you everything you need out the door. So they're behaving like a bank, but they're not proven. And a portion of your revenue could be very, very significant. So work with us to figure out, a comfortable way to make sure that you can afford this entire re-platforming experience, but just getting off the platform and signing up for something that could be a portion of your life moving forward is a very difficult thing to do. It'll come and bite you later on. But people are doing that. Very small subset, but they get scared into that, or they get dazzled into that. Because think about it, right? Somebody says, oh yeah, that's going to be $100K for an M2 site. And you're like, I don't have $100K of free cash flow because I'm an e-commerce. E-commerce margins are difficult. The market is unknown. I'm not going to make all my money till November, but I need to get to November to make my money. So what do? Somebody walks in the door and offers you this sweet deal, you take it. But then you pay for it over time. And if you do the math, that percentage is a lot worse than what you would ever do for a re-platform.
Yeah, that seems like a very short-sighted decision. Don't do that. If anybody has done that, let me know in the chat. I would love to dive deeper into the thought process that went into that decision. As always, we are here for your questions. And so if you have questions, post them in the chat. If you don't have questions, then I'm going to run out of questions, and this is going to be a very short live stream, which I'm okay with. It's Friday. I'm in California. I'm staying over in Monterey. If I need to cut out of here early a little bit, get back over to the beach, so be it. I don't know if you can see on camera, but my forehead is already a little red. The sun over here is very deceptive. It's like 60 degrees. You're out there having a good time. The breeze is blowing. You're like, you're fine. You don't put on any sunscreen, and then you get burnt. But, I'm not afraid to go back to that if you guys don't have any questions about this conversation. So I'm checking the chat here. Not James, I'm not talking about Shopify. Let me see if I can pull James' question up here. If I can't pull it up. Anyway, I've got too many things going on, too many windows to pull up. But James is saying in the chat, are we talking about Shopify without saying it? I don't think you're necessarily talking about Shopify, whose model is similar in that they are your payment provider. But we're talking about platforms that are going way beyond that. Like they actually do the implementation for a certain subset of revenue.
Yes. At the very high end, they'll do that. They'll do the implementation, they'll take a portion of your revenue, and they'll do all the sales and marketing for you.
Okay, and I'll do a little research off the stream and see if I can figure out what kind of platforms out there have that business model. It's an interesting business model, right? Like nobody would have thought taking all the payments and forcing people into a particular payment provider was a great idea until Shopify did it. And it's like, well, merchants want that flexibility. Well, there's a lot of them that, they do, but they want cheap and simple more than they want that flexibility. And so the business model is not necessarily flawed on its own. If you If you get the value and you pay a fee over time, it's just a way of financing the website. But the downside of that is you're locking yourself into an e-commerce platform that may be unproven. It may not have the functionality you need. What happens if, once you get it live, then do you have support? Do you have updates? There's just a lot of potential pitfalls with that business model. And so I would want to investigate it a little further. Again, continue with the conversation. If you have any questions, let me know. And we talked about this a little bit a minute ago with some of the previous questions, but I wanted to just kind of go through it and make sure we pull that out of that question and talk about it more specifically. But if a merchant is looking to re-platform, like what is that strategy? Exactly what are the steps they need to go through to make sure that's successful?
So again, come back to our own experience and what we see the ones that do it successfully do is they make a decision of, or they look into analyzing their own business. Like, what's my business going to do over the next 3 years and 5 years and 8 years? We've got a couple of B2B very large customers that are actually top Magento sites, and their business model was, we want to move all of our B2B transactions online by the year 2022. And nothing's going to change that, right? So that was their strategy. That's what they wanted to do. And that's the path that they're going down. And that helped define a lot of what they do with their Magento deployment. So once they made the decision that this is critical for them, this is a core part of their strategy, they're going to move all of their transactions online, then the business model needed to scale online in the best way possible, because there's a level of unknown of how quickly their users or the businesses that use their platform are going to adopt to this new way of doing business with them and how successful it was going to be. Then actually designing the workflow on the site itself of how that site functions, because if it's B2B, it's a little different level of experience. Once you get the site design and all of those pieces done, then it's the architecture. So working with the developer team to figure out what the architecture looks like, and then working with the hosting partner, in this case Webscale, on what does the architecture look like. And it's not your traditional server-based architecture. The way that Webscale does architecture deployments is very different. We make sure every single component of the website is truly scalable and can take the level of traffic that you may throw at it through the growth of your business and through large events that you do, through influencer marketing, through unplanned or planned events, all of the above. We need to make sure that it's secure, it's really, really fast at every single page, and it scales up to infinity is really what we like to promise our customers we could get there. And once you get to all of that, and you figure out what it looks like, then you start building the site. And from our side, of course, we set up a dev environment for you, then we set up a staging. If you're interested in like a UAT environment, you want to put a portion of your traffic on the site, we could do that. And then we set up the production system, and we set up time, which is sort of non-business hours, and our team stands by, your team stands by, we flip the switch and go live. So there's timeline management, there's design management, there's sort of production management, there's cost management, and all of those pieces really need to come together. So don't get overwhelmed hearing about all this, because we've done it. I'd have to say we do at least 1 or 2 re-platforming migrations a week. So we really have it down. We have the spreadsheets and the forms and the Google Sheets and the Trello boards to help you out in doing that. And I'm sure our partners like Jamerson have that as well. So let us work with you to make it easy, because you're doing it for once. We're doing it every week, multiple times. So work with partners who know what they're doing.
Absolutely. And we've got James in the chat here with a great point and a question. James' question is, or at least the point to start, is now there isn't an on-prem discount for Magento 2. Customers would have to pay extra to go to a third-party host like Webscale. And what James is talking about, for those that may not know, is if you're going to go Magento Enterprise, then you're going to get sold cloud. You're going to get sold Magento Cloud, which includes hosting. Now, used to be you could get on-prem for cheaper. So the hosting was basically an add-on. It was it was competitive. It may even be a lot cheaper in some cases. The difference between what the license costs you and the license with cloud. But they've made a change recently, months ago at this point, where buying Magento Enterprise on-prem is exactly the same license cost as if you got cloud with the hosting included. So the question with that is, what is Webscale doing to differentiate itself from Magento Commerce Cloud and to bring value to this extra cost that merchants would have to pay?
So that's an interesting one, and I think I could spend a lot of time analyzing that for you, because we've seen customers that are in contract with Magento Cloud and they break their contract and come to Webscale. And the reason they do that is the opportunity cost. They don't want to have the security issues that the Magento Cloud does, and they certainly don't want the lack of scalability. They don't want all of the lack of support where who really owns the customer? Who are they calling when, when your site is having a slowness issue? I mean, is it their CDN partner? Is it their DevOps partner? Is it their analysis partner? Like, who's the partner that's having the issue? Because with all due respect, Magento Cloud is basically a collection of all these different companies with a very, very restricted version of Magento Enterprise thrown on top of it, packaged up and sold to you. So, be very careful before you take those Magento Cloud deals, because even though they look free at the entrance, the opportunity cost you will pay for downtime and security and lack of support is far worse than any free that you're going to get. And TJ, one of the things that I've heard recently is I believe they've revisited that decision, because if they get $1 of Magento Enterprise revenue, it goes to Magento. But if they get $1 that they now have to split with their CDN partner and their DevOps partner, they're starting to realize it gets expensive really fast if a customer takes it. So there's a certain kind of customer that, maybe doesn't have security events, or maybe doesn't need to scale as much and is fine with a very limited version of using sort of Magento. Maybe that's fine for Magento Cloud, but I would strongly encourage anybody that has a real business that has potential for growth to just stay away from it. So, and I can tell you, all of the hosting companies out there that have built businesses for the likes of Magento are saying the same thing, because we're seeing customers come back. They're like, yeah, that was good, but we're leaving. And it's fine. They can come after us if they want.
All right. Again, keep your questions coming. We're going to stream for about 15 more minutes or so, and then we're going to call it an afternoon and enjoy some of this beautiful California weather here. I'm looking in the chat. I don't see any additional questions at this point. We've got Brian Schulman watching on LinkedIn. Thanks for commenting, Brian. It was nice meeting you at VidCon. I guess it's been a week now. Time is just flying. I'm on like day 20 of a 30-day road trip. I can't even keep up with what day of the week it is or what I have going on. So I am not really sure. All right, so I've got a few questions left. We'll continue through those. Again, if you have any questions, let me know. If you're watching on YouTube and you're new here, and you want to, follow along, you like this type of content, and you want to get more from your e-commerce store, consider hitting that subscribe button, tapping that notification bell while you're at it, so you'll know each time we go live. We try to go live each and every week on Friday afternoons. We are experimenting with multiple streams, throughout the week, different days, different times, trying to figure out what is best for you, what makes it easier for you to attend, to participate in these conversations, because that's what we're trying to do with this YouTube channel. Is we're trying to engage in a conversation. This is not just me giving you information. This is a two-way street, right? This is for you to ask questions, for you to, give your opinion on things that we talk about. And so if you happen to be watching on LinkedIn, consider giving me a follow. Again, same schedule. We stream everything to YouTube and LinkedIn at this point. So I will continue with my questions here if I didn't accidentally delete them. All right, so I want to move. I'm going to Magento 2 in this scenario. How do you support a merchant that's wanting to move from M1 to M2? Like what falls into, your bucket of things that you'll help them with? What task maybe that they're thinking they have to pay for with a partner will you handle? Some of the things we talk about around performance and scalability and testing it and making sure that it's secure, what of those things are you going to handle, and how are you going to help merchants deal with those during the migration?
Yeah, thanks, TJ. A lot of it. So the way that we look at our world is it's really like it's a triangle. There's the customer, there's the development partner, so the agencies that are building and designing the look and feel and the functionality of these sites, and there's all of the infrastructure pieces. So the security of it, the performance of it, the availability of it, the 24/7 support, all of that stuff is Webscale, and we deal with all of it. Now, how we help our customers, and I just love using examples. We actually have one of our oldest customers, a company called Skinit. There's a case study with them on their site where when they first went live with us, and they use a Magento 1 version, when they first went live with us, their mobile conversion rates actually went up close to 1%. And that for them was the killer app that helped with the revenue, and that started the relationship off with Webscale. That journey began a handful of years ago, and they've been great partners to us right from the beginning. Now, where they're at is they're going through this Magento 2 migration. And we're working with them through pretty much every stage of it. So like there's a regular cadence call, there's a team that's working with them on looking at the various portions of their site and making sure that there's no hiccups that we'll find out after the fact. We're locking down all of the security components of it as they go live. We're planning the timelines, we're adjusting the timelines, we're sizing up the servers, we're sizing up our firewall, we're making sure our web control rules are set correctly. We're whitelisting, blacklisting regions, geographies, areas that they will or will not ship to. So we're doing a lot of the sort of infrastructure side of it, and all they really have to worry about from their point of view, and that is not small, it's a pretty big project for them, is the look and feel of the site, the functionality of the site, the products that they have on the site, their catalog, their SKUs, how they manage their searches. That's what they focus on. So it's really the front end of it is them, and then everything else is our partnership. And so that's one example of a very high-end site that is doing this migration. But think of it this way, that everything that requires server sizing, management, security, scale out, testing, functional testing with them, load testing with them, we're happy to do all of that. And then, like I said, we start off with giving them a dev environment that's small. They can work on it, they can give their developers access to it, then we move them to a staging environment, and we may keep or remove the dev environment. Then we give them a UAT environment if that's a requirement, and then we go build a whole production environment without disrupting their existing production environment. And so that's the sort of thought process. It's a true partnership right from day one. We do encourage our customers to not be in a place where they just let us know one day that, hey, I've signed this contract with X, Y, and Z fully hosted platform, and I'm going to leave in the next 6 months. I actually have a customer that said a year and a half ago that they were going through a replatforming project and they were going to go to Shopify. They did not realize that their SKU count was so high that it would not work in Shopify. A year and a half later, they're still on us. They're still paying them because they sign a contract with them. They can't go live because it doesn't support their SKU size or their search requirements. They have a multi-store strategy, which it doesn't help them with. So they're kind of in this mess where I wish they talked to us before they made this decision. We're happy to support them moving forward, and we continue to work with them. But these are the challenging things, like take your partners, whether it's your dev agency or your hosting partner, if you have a good working relationship, take us into your confidence and tell us what you're thinking, what's bothering you, and let us help you, because I keep saying this, we see a lot of sites. You see your business, we see hundreds of business. We run 1,000 stores on our platform. So we see anything you can imagine, we've seen it.
Yeah, if you're in business, you need partners that are there to help you, right? To advise you, regardless of whether or not it's in their own best interest. And so, surprises are always a bad thing. And you've got these resources that, are your calling partners. So you might as well make sure you leverage them to ensure that, whatever direction you're going, you're at least educated in that direction, right?
And even, I'll add to that, TJ, even in terms of choosing a development partner. So I can tell you, having worked with a lot of development agencies and what we see behind the scenes, the interesting thing is that Webscale has a pretty qualitative view of the quality of code that we see. So our traffic viewer or the way that we see outages, or we see things like memory leaks, or we see code problems, we can tell you which one of the partners for a size of your site is the right partner for you. Because there's, in the partner universe, there's a lot of flavors, right? And there are people that really have great expertise in a B2B environment. There's people that have great expertise in Magento 2 deployments. And so we kind of know the right partner, and let us help you and get you in front of those people, because you kind of deserve that as you're making this decision, for sure.
All right, we've got a couple of comments and questions in the chat here. Igor, thanks for watching. Igor mentions on YouTube that Webscale rocks. We experienced a critical issue that was resolved in less than 5 minutes. Can't beat that. Keep doing a great job.
Thank you, Igor.
Always good to get positive feedback, especially on a live stream. James also mentions that anyone know what SKU size Shopify starts running into issues at? Do you know? I know they have limitations, but I'm not exactly sure what they are. Do you know what their SKU size limitations are?
I'm not really sure. I don't have the specific. Yeah, no, I don't have the exact number.
I'll see what I can do about getting you a number on that, James. I just don't. I try to stay away from Shopify as much as possible. I mean, there are some other SaaS platforms I'd be happy to talk about if you want to talk about those, but Shopify is not one of those that really falls into my domain of expertise. So, but I'll get you an answer. And James mentions Jamerson. It's clearly the right partner. I like to think so, but it's not always the case, right? I mean, that's it's fun to sit here and say, yes, we always are the right partner for every project, but we're not, right? There are certain things that we do well, certain types of customers that we work well with. And so, sometimes customers are the right fit, sometimes they're not, even for us. Yeah. And so there's, no sense in blowing smoke there. I think we are through all of the questions. I'm going to check over on LinkedIn real quick just to make sure we don't have any questions over there. It looks like we've covered everything. So we're going to finish on this last question here, unless you guys come up with something. Can you share some recommendations on what to look for in a hosting partner when you're trying to evaluate who your hosting partner is? What kind of things should you be looking at?
So that's an interesting one. I mean, I've always been of the belief that all digital businesses should be in the cloud, right? So that's a fundamental premise of you need to have a partner that really understands cloud technology. Like, unless you're really small and your entire site can run on one server, so be it. But even then, I think running it on a cloud server is always a better option, because scaling or moving across regions makes it really easy. So that's, I would say, if you're looking for a hosting partner right now, if you're really small and your business requires you to run a $50 or $100 server in a static hosting environment, it's fine to go that route. But I would strongly recommend, if you're getting started right now, start off in the cloud, because everybody's going there. The largest of businesses. Just this morning, there was a conversation around Microsoft Azure and how much they're seeing growth across their Azure business, and how much AWS is seeing growth. I think we all know. And Google Cloud is now on the Gartner Magic Quadrant for infrastructure service providers. So there's massive growth across all of these, and really big brands, including AT&T, are moving into the cloud. So if the old school guys are, people that ran data centers are moving to the cloud, you all should. So having said that, after that, you need to look at your hosting partner and say, what is it I truly need from them, right? I need to have the right level of infrastructure. So what that looks like, you get down the path of choosing one set of servers, but then if your site is going to grow in a big way, or it has certain seasonal traffic, then taking a sort of static view of your hosting, even in a cloud environment, is problematic. So choose a hosting partner that has a level of scaling. There's multiple kinds of scaling out there, and you'll hear a lot of companies, including Magento Cloud, talking about auto scaling. It's not auto scaling from anybody else but Webscale. So Webscale is truly known for what we call predictive auto scaling, where we ensure that response times on sites are a key level of how we scale up sites. And we can scale up sites to any level of traffic. Our scaling happens one instance, multiple instances. It doesn't have to be a gradual increase of traffic. You won't see a slowdown on your site when you work with Webscale. You'll see really fast performance as we scale up, and as soon as the traffic goes away, we scale back down, so we're not wasting your money or time. So that's a really critical thing to think about, is do I have a truly flexible infrastructure, or Am I giving somebody, 3 months of notice before I can run a sale? Is my marketing team getting that freedom to provide the infrastructure they need? And then I would say, sitting down and understanding what is important for you. Like we have a couple of customers that run businesses. They may want an additional storefront in Korea. Because we deliver service across 75 locations worldwide with our integration with various cloud providers, we can set up businesses anywhere in the world. So even though we're sitting here in the US in Sunnyvale, you come to us and say, I need to set up a storefront in Australia, we can do that for you. We have customers that we deliver out of Australia as well. So keep that in mind. Keep your growth plans in mind as you choose a partner. And most importantly, I think what's worked for us with our partner base is we understand e-commerce. So we're not a plain vanilla hosting partner. And when you're choosing that hosting partner, just keep in mind that, do they understand my business? Because hosting is a sort of thought process, or cloud hosting, cloud automation is a thought process that's sort of one side. And then e-commerce is a very interesting universe that I got first introduced to really in 2013, 2014. And these two universes and the overlap between them is what companies like Webscale really thrive in, because that's what we focus on. So just know that it's not just a hosting company. It's a company that understands your business, because your business requirements, and do we have a fully staffed team when it comes time for Black Friday, and are we able to take multiple levels of escalation, and do we have a 24/7 follow the sun support? Do we have a critical escalation process? Do we answer your phone in less than a minute and resolve issues in less than 5 minutes? Absolutely. We have SLAs around all of that. So thinking through all of those requirements, it's not always about the cost. And make sure you don't make it about the cost, because we are not the cheapest solution on the market, and I'll be the first one to say it, because we give you what you truly need, and you're not losing revenue behind the scenes. You're actually maintaining your revenue and growing it, and your users have this great experience when they come to your site. So I know a long answer, but
hey,
it's pretty intense.
Great service costs money, so don't always go with the cheapest option. It looks like we've got all of the questions answered on YouTube and on LinkedIn. So with that, I think we're going to call it a day. We're going to go enjoy some of this beautiful, beautiful California sunshine we've got going on out here. I want to thank you for joining me. If you would, just kind of leave everybody with how they can get in touch with you if they want to know more.
Absolutely. So my personal email is sonal@webscale.com. You're always welcome to reach me. I'm the biggest Webscale fan you'll find. Otherwise, you can send an email to info@webscale.com. You can visit our website. It's webscale.com. That's our domain. We do have a LinkedIn page. You can reach us from there. It's all monitored. Our social media is pretty active. You can tweet to us if that's of interest, or you can go to our Facebook page. There's many ways to contact us, and we look forward to working with you.
All right. So again, if you're new around here and you want to get more from your e-commerce store, consider hitting that subscribe button. Or if you're watching over on LinkedIn, give us a follow. I don't know. I mean, we're streaming sometime next week. Again, we're experimenting with days and time, so I'm a little off on exactly when we've got all of these scheduled. We've got some fun live streams scheduled coming up over the next several weeks. We are booked solid pretty much through August, so you'll see me at least for the next 4 or 5 weeks streaming once, sometimes twice a week. And with that, we're going to call it a day, and I look forward to seeing y'all in the next video.